91.3 FM WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative, brought to you by the mandatory student activity fee here at Buffalo State.
Okay. Tina's?
Latinas make history every day. Okay.
Can you read it for me?
Well, how do you say this one?
Latinas?
Latinas make history every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. It is 91.3 FM WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative. We are here with Latina Herstory Live. Super excited. Episode 2 of our mini-series. My name is Talia. I am part of the SUNY Buffalo State University family here on campus radio. Super excited to talk. Who do I have on the line with me? Do you guys want to say hi?
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
This is my co-host. Oh, hello. Hi. I'm so glad that you're here. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
So, yeah, this is Leslie. I'm here. I'm a little bit hoarse voice. But anyhow, I'm so glad to be here for our second Legacy in Action, a storyteller's journey to civic engagement. And today's topic is parenting and justice. And so, first, we have here Antoine Johnson, and I understand he's a fatherhood practitioner. I love that title. Can you tell me more?
Absolutely. And first, I just want to thank you and Talia for having me on this morning. It's really an honor and privilege to be a part of this conversation. And so, fatherhood practitioner, it's just a fancy term that describes someone who studies and is involved in the field and area of fatherhood, whether they're providing services or just sharing research and information around fatherhood.
Okay. So, so when you say that, like, who are your, I would say, clients?
Yeah. So currently, I've been involved in this field for about 6 years now in October, and my clients or the folks that I look to serve are just anyone, any dads in the Western New York area. Ironically enough, though, our team actually has a partnership with the Bronx. And so we've been working with the Bronx for almost 2 years now, and they have a heavy Hispanic population. So it really depends on what season we're in, but our focus is mainly on Western New York.
Okay. So I'm not sure if you had a chance to look. So how this series is that Talia is so gracious to host on her Latina Herstory was started to lead into Albert Williams Voter Engagement Day, which is on October 15th, which is his birthday. And that was my great grand uncle. He was the first voting rights martyr. And so for a long time, you could hardly hear anything about him because it was just like, he was silent. His life was silent. But then in 2015, we had a cold case investigative lawyer, Jim Emerson, who was able to get the unredacted files from the FBI. And there was a ceremony. And so he's like officially in history now. And but everything was around the death, the lynching, the trauma of it. And I wanted to reverse that and make it around his life, which is why the Voter Engagement Day is on his birthday instead of his death day. And what's interesting is when you focus on the death, you forget like the middle part. And one of the things that I first heard about him was what a wonderful uncle he was to my grandmother, and also how he wanted to have kids himself. And in fact, he and his wife were looking to adopt. And so he just thought, like, I don't have a lot of words from him because he wasn't a writer or, he wasn't chronicled like that. But from what I've got from family is that, he was very family oriented, and he saw like the father and uncle role, like very serious. So can you talk a little bit about what role does fatherhood play um, to you in a child's sense of self or bloodline or even taking on legacy?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. So, as I was thinking about this, one of the things that I thought about was how critical of a role that fathers play in the life of children when it comes to their self-image and self-esteem. And I thought about my daughter. So my daughter's 3 right now, and so she loves dressing up and things like that. And so anytime she puts on a dress or her mother does her hair, like this morning before she went to preschool, she's always like running to me like, "Daddy, look at me." And and she's looking at me, she's looking to me to affirm her, right, in her beauty, which she is confident about, right?
Absolutely.
But she's looking at dad to say, "Do you think I look pretty?"
Right.
And it's part of my responsibility, and my wife has to remind me sometimes because I mean, I'm a guy, so I don't really think a lot about like, you know, self-image and like, and my pretty necessarily, but it's important to my daughter. And so sometimes my wife is like, is reminding me like, no, you need to let her know, right? Like she's excited, she's looking to you.
Right.
So I'm constantly reminded about the importance of my role as it relates to my daughter's self-image. And I have a 1-year-old son, so he's not there yet, and he's not going to do exactly the same things, but it'll be equally important, right? And when we talk about legacy and bloodline, so I come from family on both my mother's side and my father's side where like this whole topic of legacy is not necessarily talked about a lot. In fact, I really don't know like my father's father too well or my mother's father too well, right? So like the whole idea of legacy is there's a gap. But for me, what I'm looking to do is write a new legacy when it comes to my family, right? So although I have the same last name, our last name is going to mean something different for this generation and the next because of the foundation that I'm going to lay. So yeah, no, I love that question.
Hey, Antoine, let me just confirm what you said. This is Willie H., one of the hosts. So, I have five children, 4 daughters. The 3 daughters was able to sit in my lap. I was able to love on them, touch them, all that. There was 1 daughter that didn't get all that attention, and the reason for that is because she looked so much like her mother. I kind of like, no, kind of. But I saw the difference between her and the other girls. The other girls was confident. When she became 13 teenage, she started looking for love in other places. Because and I had to realize immediately, oh, shoot, I made a mistake here. So I started, hugging on her, kissing on her more to let her know, no, daddy loves you too. Daddy was just trying to be safe, not to, overdo it with you. But it is so important that us men love and let our daughters know you are beautiful, you are wonderful, I love you, and then also show it in action. So what you're saying is right on, Antoine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting me to think about something else as it relates to legacy, right? Because even as we're talking about our daughters or sons, but since we're talking about our daughters, right, like the kind of women that they will be,
right,
will have a lot to do with the way that we show them appropriate affection and affirm them and so forth, right? Like, so their husbands, if they get married and stuff like that, like they'll resemble in character the kind of men that we were to them, right? Which is going to have an impact on our grandchildren and so forth, right? So it runs really deep, even though a lot of times it feels so minuscule in the moment.
Yeah.
So I was
Alia, you talked a lot about your abuela. Do you have any memories of your father or grandfather?
So yeah, absolutely. My dad, it was and is a huge part of my life growing up, and it was really important for me as a biracial person to have him as a resource as I was navigating identity development. And I know for people who have mixed backgrounds, having that parent in proximity or having access to them in the stories or the culture, or just being like, hey, you look more like me, like you were saying, Willie, was really important. And Leslie, I've been a humble supporter of the Fatherhood Initiative just because I think that fathers weren't always equally
Yeah.
equally
Right.
involved in developing some of the infrastructures that impact our communities' families. But I also think of neuroscience, and like when my son was born, Leslie, and then I'm
Yeah.
going to give it back to you. I know, and Antoine, you could probably say, because I know you've worked with different researchers, that there is research about the impact of like that skin to skin when newborns are first born, and males give off different hormones. Like they're aware when they're connecting with their father versus their mother. I think about how important that was for my son when he was born. So even from the time even of conception and prenatal, dads are so important and fathers are so important. I'm just humbled to be here to listen. So Leslie, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Oh no, that was great. Yeah, I just hadn't heard you talk about their daddy.
Yeah, my dad is an interesting guy. He is from public housing. He's a public school kid, and he was in law enforcement. So he has a very strong personality, and definitely someone who was a resource for me, like I said, because I'm biracial. So I'm, for those of you who are listening to me for the first time, I am Puerto Rican, and my dad, by the way, of New York City. And then my mom is Sicilian and Irish. So growing up in the 90s, I always say I was biracial before the Gap commercials, Leslie. Like before it was like a national phenomenon. Anton, you're from Buffalo, so you know the energy. So just having my dad there was a huge deal for me, and I'm very grateful to be on the line with both of you. Anton, did you want to say a little bit about just like how, if it's okay, Leslie, if I could interject, how like the movement got started and like how you're connected to the
Yes.
national one?
Yeah, so locally here in Buffalo, our CEO, Luann Brown of Buffalo Prenatal, saw a gap in services and support for men in our agency. So Buffalo Prenatal has been around for 30 plus years, but like there'd never been like a big focus on fathers, right? There's some programming within the organization that serves dads along with moms, but they're not necessarily, or they weren't the priority. And so our program has afforded us the opportunity to be able to focus on dad, children, and moms too. We've had programs where moms are involved, but mainly like, just really zeroing in on the needs of men and fathers.
Right. Right.
And in
So
relation to the National Fatherhood Initiative, we usually get a lot of resources and support from them. So when we talk about the stats that 18.3 million children in America today grow up in households without their biological father or father figure, those sort of that information, that research is provided through the National Fatherhood Initiative.
oh, thank you. Yeah. So um, I also wanted to think about. So I have a good relationship with my daddy, but when I was a child, he wasn't physically like after the divorce, which was I was like just before 3 years old. There, I didn't have him physically in the home and a regular part of my life through most of my childhood. And so what I had though, I had uncles. Like I had a dozen of uncles, literally between both sides. I had these uncles that filled in the gap.
What a blessing,
And
Leslie.
yeah, I had layers of uncles. So like my grandma's uncles were still alive until they started dying off when I was a teen. So I had uncles and great grand uncles, and so they played a really important role. So if you think about um, from an uncle or non-biological dad standpoint, do you have any tools or conversations that you think that they can fill the gap in with, or that you've seen that is um, positive or successful in the work that you do?
That's such a good question.
Yeah. I think you said it all, right, with the example that you gave, because a lot of times, like with the stats I share, right, like 1 in 4 children don't have a biological father, or in some cases a father figure like you have through your uncles. And so I think anytime there are men and families that are able to stand in the gap and be that father figure and feel that the void, right? Like that father hunger void, which is the physical or emotional absence of a father is huge. It plays a huge role. Similar to you, my father's in and out of my life too, right? So I didn't have him regularly involved. And so later on in life, I had some mentors who came into my life and they were like fathers to me, right? So I think that's super important. In fact, Talia, I remember we were on a call earlier this month and you mentioned something in regards to how involved uncles are in the Hispanic community with their families, and I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
that was really enlightening to me.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Also, Antoine, even in my family, our father was there, but my father was a hard worker, so he's
Yeah.
out working a lot. Our uncles came in; they became our mentors. Uncles taught us how to entertain and sing. We were supposed to be we had 5 brothers, so they was trying to teach us to be the Jackson 5. But the hip hop, that rap came in, hip hop, and we became rappers, the Factor 5 MC. But they were our mentors. They was the one that said, "You guys are incredible. Yeah, you black, but you're black, you're talented, and you can do it." And so we became rappers, right? Right, because of them, because they mentor us.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say, I know that Willie and Antoine, and obviously Leslie, like your dads must be so proud of you to be in a place where you can lift up other dads is super special. And Antoine, as you mentioned, in the Taino community, shout out to everybody who's celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month in the Taino community, which is the right, Leslie, which is the indigenous community of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. Like we were a matriarchal society. So your mom's brother, when you were born, right, Leslie, they had more control over your life, your guidance, your lessons, Will, than your actual biological dad. And that theme of your mom's brother being someone who is like a huge resource to you carries through. My brother's actually my son's godfather, and I know my son really needs and loves his dad. So I'm humbled to be able to support. Antoine, could you tell people how they can find more information on your work specifically? I know the podcast is out. There's a lot excuse me, that people can absorb, especially if they're listening from outside Buffalo. And I just want to remind folks about how to navigate there.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have our website is www.bppn.org. Anyone can email me at ajohnson@bppn.org. And like you said, we have we're a growing presence on social media. So Facebook, if you Google Buffalo Prenatal, you'll see a lot of our content on there. So yeah, no, thank you again for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So helpful, and thank you. So today is September 22nd, and on this day in 1846, when my 6th great grandparents were married on a plantation, and that's as far as we can trace. Yeah.
But Leslie, isn't that the book?
Is that a book?
Is that in the book?
It is.
So, Mr. Johnson, you'll find out I'm on Team Leslie. It's like an actual thing. So, Leslie, do you want to just say the name of the book really quick for those who want to join Team Leslie and also read?
So it's in the legacy of Tamar, but it's also chronicled on the white side or the white part of the family, because the I don't know a better way to say slave masters were Methodist ministers who kept diaries, and it was 2 of their best slaves or best workers or whatever married on that day on September 22nd, and Tamar was the wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, Tamar's mom, Isabel. So Sam and Isabel married on September 22nd, 1846, and they had Tamar, and Tamar kept that legacy up, and she is the reason why we know so much about our family.
Oh my Lord.
You have such a beautiful family.
That's huge.
Leslie, thank you for sharing that with us, and for always reminding us that our present advocacy is informed by those who came before us. Thank you for co-hosting. Antoine, Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for coming and
Thank
for your
you.
work. I think I'm really
Thank you.
proud of it, both locally and nationally. And Willie, can you close the space for us? That's another episode. I think episode 2. So excited.
Oh, you got episode 2?
This is
I'm not,
episode 2. I'm so excited.
I'm not prepared for episode 2. So we are we going off on this one and going and coming to another one?
We're
Yeah,
supposed to.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's
supposed to come
10:40.
back.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
10:40. We have
10:40.
somebody talking about the other part of the family, motherhood.
Yeah,
Oh.
and Mr. Johnson, while you're on the line, I hope and pray, Leslie, I was going to say this to connect Dr. Ansari with Antoine, just so that they can be in network, because I think there's so much duality between their work from what I know of her. So I'm so excited. And Mr. Johnson, if you can tune in, we have another episode coming up right after you.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much for coming.
Thank you.
Tina?
Latinas make history every day. Okay.
Can you read it for me?
Well, how do you say this one?
Latinas?
Latinas make history every day. Okay.